our attention to the baseball team here. They splashed around and found a Carlos Correa for $200 million to play shortstop this week. There's been a bunch of trade rumors. Let's start with this one from Noah Welch on YouTube. Luis Arraez doesn't hit many home runs. Okay, well, we set the Major League record for home runs in 2019 and got bounced in a matter of days in the playoffs. Arraez grinds out at-bats. He's a spark plug, and he gives you many quality at-bats. Come on, Twins. They're overthinking this with some of the Luis Arraez, like trade him for a starting pitcher rumors that are out there. So I'll take Noah's comment and ask you guys, how would you feel if the Twins traded Luis Arraez for a pitcher? Should they be shopping Luis Arraez?
I don't think it's a terrible idea to shop him. I don't, but to what Doug said, I think I would want more than what they're currently trying to get. Here's my thought, okay? And it's not quite a conspiracy, because I think if you connect the pieces of the reporting puzzle, it actually makes some sense. I think they're trying to get Lopez from Miami and are probably willing to trade Arraez so that they can turn around and trade Gray, because they've got three starting pitchers who are going to be pending free agents unless signed to extensions. Maeda, who you're not going to trade right now. Malley, who you're not going to trade right now because of concerns about their health, and Gray. And so I think the end game here is to try to trade Gray. So I don't like how this is shaking out. And the other thing too is Arraez is not only a really valuable bat, he's a valuable guy because of the versatility. And it's not like you don't have injury problems. Like we can say, well, the new trainer is going to be great. Okay, but they've said that before. And so
Isn't that the fifth time we've done this with the trainer?
Since they fired Dick Martin like in the late 90s or early 2000s, they're always like, we got a new trainer and you should see this guy, athletic trainer. So my reaction is I certainly understand making trades. Kepler for sure should be shopped. I would hang on to Arraez. I would not be as eager as they appear, Dex, to trade Luis Arraez.
I consider for the right piece for sure. Pablo Lopez is a good pitcher. He's an above average quality pitcher. He's 27. But I probably need something more than Pablo Lopez for Luis Arraez.
Right.
I probably need something. I need a next level pitcher for Luis Arraez.
Here's where I'm at with this. All right. I do think Arraez probably showed you his peak last year. He's not a power guy. He's not really an amazing defender, and you're kind of like putting his glove at first base. And if you then compare his offense to other first basemen, obviously the power is way, way, way down the list. And so his bat is less valuable because he's playing first base. If he could be a starting second baseman, but he's not a great defender. And they got Jorge Polanco at second. They've got on the left side, you got Carlos Correa, you got Miranda, you got Royce Lewis coming down the pipe. So where he plays is a question, and if he plays first base, it just devalues him as a player. So I'll grant you that maybe this is a good time to sell high on him.
Sure.
But he is a really good hitter in an era where I think we've gone so far off the deep end with strikeouts don't matter. Well,
right.
They're automatic outs, so they do matter to some extent. He puts the ball in play. And he does start rallies, and he's constantly on base. So he is very valuable. He's also only 25 years old, and he's under team control for like 3 more seasons. So he's a really cheap asset for you. Even if you don't sign him to an extension, he's just like a really cheap, good player for 3 more seasons. If you're looking to trade him for, let's face it, like a number 3 starting pitcher, a mid-rotation guy, what does that say about 6 years of lack of pitching development internally? I just think the only reason why you're considering trading him is because you've done a bad job developing pitchers internally. If you had 5 or 6 guys ready to rock as number 2, number 3 starters internally, or God forbid, a number 1 starting ace, you would never consider trading Luis Arraez right now unless you thought some team was going to overpay for his services.
Yep.
So I feel like they've kind of created this mess with their lack of starting pitching development. And they've got a few guys that are interesting coming through the pipeline. I don't know that they have a ready-made number 1 or number 2 starter ready to pop outside of maybe Joe Ryan. So it just kind of feels like they're digging a hole deeper because of their failure to develop pitching. And that's why the Arraez stuff has popped up. So I'd like to keep Arraez unless the team blows me away with something better than a number 3 starting pitcher. If we're talking about like Arraez in a package for the other dude in Miami, like the actual number 1 starter,
Sandy Alcantara.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and
let's
that,
have a conversation.
Yes,
but
if I package him with Kepler and a prospect and get a true 1, that's a different discussion.
Yes, I agree.
But if I may for 1 second play the role of a Twins MD, Twins doctor, Twins chief of staff. I'm going to tell you right now, the MRI that scares me is not the shortstop. It's the second baseman, Polanco. I think Polanco's ankle and leg is an issue. It has been for 2 years. And look, to his credit, he plays through it. But this is a weird team because they do not really, they don't value guys that play through pain as much as some teams because they're itching to sit them. So like Polanco's tough, but let's just get past tough for a second. Polanco's had a couple of years now where this has become a concern and has cost him games at times. And Arraez is a plug and play guy at second, ideally. So I don't think this team has a track record of health enough to take depth for granted.
Yeah. That's the other thing though. If I don't know that if you were to put Arraez at a different position, I don't know that. I just don't think he's got a great glove. He also made a couple years ago, he made a boneheaded play.
It
was like, what was the
playoff game?
In was it Houston or New York? I thought it was maybe in the New York game.
No, it was the Astros game because we
Polanco made a boneheaded play.
Oh.
Polanco sailed the ball into the outfield against the Astros.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of then.
Arraez
In
did
New York,
something else.
He fell down because he was playing hurt and his ankle gave out in New York.
Yeah.
And they started him and he like basically just fell down.
In general, though, if you're looking to trade one of your best hitters who's 25 years old under team control for 3 cheap seasons because you can't find a number 3 starting pitcher internally at this point.
Are you fired?
All right, TJ Voigt chimes in here via the SKOR North app. I'm very surprised about how optimistic you guys have been about the Carlos Correa signing. They ended up paying about $40 million more than the next highest bidder on a 6-year contract for a player that was deemed damaged goods by 2 other more competent organizations. Do you really think this will work out for the Twins given their history? I guess my question back to you, TJ, is, and I acknowledge everything you just said is accurate. They did pay a $40 million tax, basically. Like the tax for Correa to choose Minnesota over the Mets was an extra $40 million on a 6-year contract. Mm-hmm. And you did have 2 other medical staff say, we're definitely not doing a 13-year deal or a 10-year deal. We could talk about a 6-year deal, but at this price point, right? So major red flags. But my question back would be, what are they supposed to do? Like they haven't won a playoff game since 2004. They had the lowest attendance at Target Field non-pandemic in history since the ballpark was constructed. Like, this franchise is beige paint on a wall. They have to do something. Like, what if you didn't sign Correa and overpay for Correa potentially and take a risk on him? I don't know what else they were going to do to be relevant in the next 2 to 3 years. Like, pray that Buxton can play 150 games for the first time. I don't know.
Risks are us, man. Risks are us. Buxton, give him a contract. Correa,
Malley,
contract.
Paddock
Malley,
just agreed. He just agreed to avoid arbitration today.
Dyson, you bring your cat Schnuckles here, and it turns out you're a jerk. I would say that the Twins are, in this case, like this whole Correa thing isn't, if you really think about it, super palatable. Like it doesn't go down tasting like a Surly. Okay. Scott Boras brought him back here as the 3rd choice. And then at the press conference, make no mistake, this didn't get pointed out enough frontally. Bitched and moaned the entire time about the fact that he had to be there because he kept saying the medical community screwed us. That is code for the Giants and Mets were our choices and we got screwed. Being a Twins fan is difficult. I'm going to tell you this right now. Following this team is difficult. When you're trading for guys who are actively hurt, when you are like the Buxton contract is a great contract, but you basically, Buxton and Correa are akin potentially to ticking time bombs. You never know when they're going to blow up. And I don't mean in a good way at the plate. So the point is a great one, but I'm just going to say being a sports fan in this town, and I think being a fan of the Twins in particular right now, It's difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a damned if you do, because, yeah, there's a huge risk here that other teams are saying his ankle is a ticking time bomb. And the Twins are saying, it might be, but whatever.
Hey, Doc,
we need him for
what do you
6
think of
years.
the MRI. Hold on, I'm not going to put down my Juicy Lucy and assess it. Looks good to me.
It's the least relevant this franchise has been probably since they moved into the new ballpark. They had a dormant stretch there of like 4 or 5 years, but the ballpark was still fresh. They were still drawing. They were still, I think the first 5, because they got really bad the second year at Target Field,
Right.
and they stayed bad for like 4 more years.
Right.
But the ballpark kind of, it was so new and fresh and fun, and they still put 30,000 people in that stadium. They almost had a grace period. Now that the new ballpark shine has worn off and people aren't just going to see the new concession stands as often, this might be the least relevant they've been. And this move to sign Correa, albeit risky, it's their way of kind of pushing back on that lack of relevance, right? And trying to gain some more footing.
And would you prefer to see a ticking time bomb, but a star player, or Kyle Farmer at shortstop?
Right. Yeah. They were fully prepared to go with the latter there for until about Monday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Cody has a beef with Declan here. Cody says he was watching the live stream reaction on the SKOR North YouTube channel, Mackie and Judd podcast. He says, this is for Declan. I am a devout listener. I remember when Correa signed with San Francisco a month ago, or agreed with San Francisco, and Declan said he needed a break from the team for not keeping Carlos. He said he was gaslit by the Twins, and the Twins were used for a summer fling, etc. He went into detail live on the podcast about this and other things Correa related. Now he's saying getting Correa on a very team-friendly contract doesn't excite him at all. I get the Twins' frustration. I have been upset over the years as well. But you can't sit here as a Minnesota fan and say you're not excited about having a superstar shortstop sign here long-term. This never happens for the Twins.
Okay. So Correa is a good player, but that part's fine. My issue is, as I explained to you guys when we did this emergency episode earlier this week, is there was no backup plan. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to run this back. They're going to say, look, here's our prize acquisition. Here's the superstar shortstop that was here before. Come watch him. He's only going to play in 125 games. We're going to run out the same rotation again. It's gaslighting at its finest. I'm in a Slack chat with all my high school friends, and they were breaking down. Look at this lineup. Doesn't this lineup look so good? Is this what we're going to do? Because we're going to look at up and down.
Because Kirillov's wrist is hanging by a thread.
Exactly.
I need to know more.
It's the ifs, it's the ands, it's the buts, it's the gaslighting. And there was no backup plan. So you got Correa, which was great, but you got him at the 13th hour after every other option out there to improve your pitching staff, improve other things on the team is gone. And then if you want to improve yourself still on that pitching side or in those holes where you need to improve yourself, you have to trade your prospects, and that's something I want to see this team do. If they can do that for the right pieces, by the way, not the damaged goods of Chris Paddock or Tyler Mahle, then that's a different conversation, and I will applaud them. But I won't get super excited about a team that's basically running the same team back that was 15 games below 500 for the last 4 months of the season.
Yeah, I'm more excited than Declan is, even though I also am equally frustrated with this franchise. But the crazy thing is, to your point, if to use a poker analogy, they had like a 2-outer on the river. They literally needed okay, there's 2 jacks left in the deck. We need one of them to spike on the last card. The only way we win this hand is if a 1 in 50 shot or whatever hits on the last card. And that's what happened here. What would this all look like? What would the subsequent moves be from now until spring training if he had signed a 6-year deal with the Mets instead? And that, I agree with that frustration. There's been a lot of, this front office has had a lot of missteps in the last 2 or 3 years. And if it wasn't for the luck factor of these physicals going awry and then this kind of coming back in their laps, what team were they going to trot out in 2023, right?
The Kyle Farmer team.
So they were that close to just being even less relevant because they put all their eggs in the Carlos Correa basket. So I feel that too. But, now it's back to a lot of ifs, right? And if the ifs happen, if Buxton, if Correa health-wise, if Kirilloff, if Royce Lewis, if these pitchers, if you check off a lot of these ifs, this will be a really good team. But it's a lot of ifs.
Their inability to develop and just as importantly at key times acquire pitching, especially bullpen help, though. I got to see him do it. I got to see him like actually do it. I got to see him trade for guys that aren't hurt. I've got to see them make that big splash trade that they refused to make in 2019 and instead said, Dyson and Romo, just wait till you see them.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very skeptical about the baseball acumen here. They've done some good things, but I'm skeptical. Jury is out. And look, Scott Boras running the team does not qualify as the Twins get. You know, when Scott referred to Carlos as assistant GM, that was code for I've got you by you know what.
How about that?
He's the assistant GM.
He literally, and he was kind of joking, but not really.
No, he wasn't. No, it's very clear that Carlos has told them what they need to do.
Yeah.
It's very clear that this is a Boris Correa production. You know, I love this whole thing of, well, Derek stayed in contact. I'm sure he did, but I'm sure it was Scott that told Derek to make that clear.
Oh. PY Tube 777 on YouTube chimes in here and says, if the Twins don't win a championship in these 6 years of Correa's contract, it's all for nothing. I'll phrase it into a question here and say, what does need to happen in the next 6 years? Winning a playoff game.
Step one.
Absolutely, right? I would say winning a playoff game this year.
Well,
yeah, it's more teams get in than anybody. Go win a freaking playoff game right now.
Let's forget Correa's 6 to potentially 10-year contract. Let's talk about what needs to happen here in the next few years for, in Joe Polad's eyes, for Falvey and Levine to stay here. Because I think that's the ticking clock as far as who stays.
Well, for you,
if Carlos
that clock ain't ticking.
Yeah, I agree
internally.
If
that clock is not ticking internally.
I agree with Phil.
If attendance continues to be bad, if this team continues, they
kept Terry Ryan. The same family kept Terry Ryan employed for like 20 years.
I agree, but hopefully, perhaps Joe is not as patient. But there's a lot of business things here, guys, that if they continue, and I hear what you guys are saying, and I don't fundamentally disagree from what we've seen. So that would need to change. But when you consider this, attendance with Carlos Correa on your team was terrible. That's impressively bad. You were in first place in a division that, just to be clear, I'll speak slowly, sucked. You fell apart. That's bad. Your television contract, when that is the heart and soul, that's the heartbeat of your financial stability in lots of ways, is up in 1 year. And just having Correa back ain't going to get you a big contract. It's going to need to be, we showed marked improvement. So I'm just saying, from a business standpoint, Joe Polad and the Polads need to understand that unless there is legitimate reason for excitement and optimism, and I don't mean trying to, as Declan says, gaslight, just from a business standpoint, at some point in time, something's got to give. And that's before 6 years.
And to Judd's point, maybe they are taking necessary steps there. They re-signed Carlos Correa. They're updating both the video boards at Target Field to try to enhance stadium experience. But at the end of the day, if you really want to change the image, it's not running back the same thing and the same thing that they've been doing for 25 years. You're talking about, you would like to see internal changes from top down, everything from executives to down to ballpark presentation to everything involved. And to Mackey's point, they've never really shown the necessary steps to make significant changes like that.
Well, the front office change from Terry Ryan to now Thad Levine and Derek Falvey was a huge change, like a 180-degree change. Yeah. They revamped the entire internal scouting department in terms they didn't revamp the whole scouting department, but they brought in a lot more people to fortify with analytics. And they went from being this sort of archaic 10 years behind the times franchise from a baseball ops standpoint to being toward the front of the line. And in some ways, I think that's actually hurt the organization too. They're so reliant on decisions they make at 2:00 in the afternoon, as opposed to leaving some room for, a gut check from your manager and field staff. But yeah, the whole thing, they've made some big changes, but there's just a staleness about it because they haven't made a run in the playoffs. Because, even think about like 10, 15 years ago. All right, I'm thinking about going to a Twins game on a Friday night. And, Metrodome even, 2006 or 2009. And there was a lot of box office guys that you might want to see, right? You go see Johan Santana pitch. Go see Francisco Liriano pitch. Go see Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, Torrey Hunter. Like, they had box office, local box office attractions. Right now, I think Carlos Correa is, but obviously the ticket sales didn't spike last year. Byron Buxton is, but you don't know if he's going to play, and he doesn't play in half the games. Yeah. Do they have any pitchers right now of the 15 pitchers they're going to have on their roster at any given time that you would pay money to go see?
Judd and I sat through a monsoon to watch Shohei Ohtani pitch in September. We literally sat, and we actually I'm getting kind of. We had a couple too many drinks at the bar, but still, that was the biggest pitching draw that we were looking forward to. It wasn't Joe Ryan or Bailey Ober. No way.
Well, and they have to know this too. Slapping a new coat of paint on that place every year is not going to draw people. Like the scoreboard. Okay, now we're improving the scoreboard. Now we put some artificial turf beyond right field so that kids can play on a horse or something. That's not going to draw folks. And the other thing too is
a deep playoff run to get people emotionally invested. That's how you do it.
And when they were bad in the Metrodome, of course, attendance plummeted. But keep in mind too, tickets then were cheap. Like for what you're charging people now to go to a ball game to drink, $16 craft beers, you need to be winning baseball games. And that includes playoff games. And until you can consistently prove that you are a contender to do so, people aren't going to buy in. How many people next season are going to show up because of the scoreboard?
Yeah,
there's
some big scoreboard aficionados out there.
A pipe dream.
Might show up.
Big Darktronic fan. Just love those scoreboards. Love to go all around the Midwest. They do a great job.
It's a pipe dream.
So yeah, I think I'm curious. I think Correa will be fine with his ankle for a few years, but they need to. You don't win people over with a press conference in January. You win, and hell, you don't win people over with a hot start in April because that can go away quickly, as we saw last year.
Yep.
You win people over in October. That's how a generation of fans got hooked in the late 80s, early 90s. That's how my generation of fans, and maybe Declan's, got hooked in 2002 because they went to the ALCS, came out of nowhere in 2001, a likable group of players, and now it's 10 years. They need that. And it can't just be like, oh, we won a fun regular season game in April. It's got to be October success to some extent.
The 88 Twins drew 3 million fans all summer into an indoor stadium. It wasn't because it was a good stadium.
Yep. And then one more here for the day here. Nick Howard chimes in via the SKOR North app. This offseason, Judd Reviews Wrestling needs to come back as a segment. So we're definitely going to bring back movie reviews once the football season's over. We've got a list of big wrestling moments historically. Judd Zulgad, not a wrestling fan at all. We make him review and explain from his perspective some of the biggest moments in professional wrestling history.
So we did that for what, about a month and a half period? I don't think it was that long that we did that. Did I do the Montreal screw job?
Yeah.
Yes, you did. You did the screw job. You did the pipe bomb.
Pipe bomb was good. Yeah, I did the pipe bomb.
We'll get a few more in there for you.
Yeah, because I think the pipe bomb was where I learned about the difference between, what is it, an act and a work, or a work and a something?
A shoot, a work and a shoot.
Shoot, no, yeah.
A shoot would be something that's real. A work is something that is scripted.
Yep.
Sometimes you have what's called a worked shoot.
Yes.
Which is, hey, we're gonna script that you will go out there with a microphone, so we all know that you're gonna go do this, but we don't know what you're gonna say, and it's gonna be a little real. You blend.
Oh, it's great.
Blur the lines. Yeah.
And then Vince gets mad.
And then sells the WWE to the Saudis, which hasn't happened officially yet. But
Greg Norman will run it.
Dude, actually, the Khan family that owns one of the soccer teams, and they own the Jaguars, and they own AEW, the biggest competitor to WWE. They have enough money, and there's a CNBC report that they are pursuing a merger, which would really just be like, they would buy it. They would. What if the Khans come in, the biggest rival right now at the WWE, and they offer by far the biggest offer. Would Vince McMahon be able to set his ego and pride aside and take the biggest offer to sell off to a competitor?
Oh my God. I mean, it would be epic, and it'd be an insane. I mean, Judd, from your old Media Beat days, this would be a great TV story too, because obviously USA Network and Comcast has been in charge of, WWE for a long time. Obviously now AEW's back on TNT and Turner, just like WCW was. So now you're talking about two networks going head to head with consistent 5-day-a-week programming. Like those, I was listening to a podcast yesterday where Dave Meltzer was talking about it and was saying, those aren't what they used to be, but it's consistent and it's reliable viewership for those networks that they can just say, hey, even if the ad insertion and the advertisement doesn't reach for those programs, it is consistent and it's 5 days a week and I know what I'm getting out of it. It could be also a great TV war debacle to watch play out too.
Yeah, who gets the rights then?
That's
so there's two discussions right now with WWE. There's the rights, so they have media rights with USA, and then they have media rights for their library and their like pay-per-views with Peacock. So those rights are coming up, I think. But over the top of that, Vince is looking to potentially just sell the whole company. So there's it's
so great,
very interesting time.
So what became of their website?
WWE Network. They rolled it into Peacock.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They took their entire catalog of everything and all their pay-per-views and they rolled it right into Peacock. Like,
did they sell it to Peacock then?
No, Peacock essentially it's just like any other rights deal. It's just like the NBA with ESPN or the WWE has licensed. It's like a 2-year, 3-year deal. Has licensed to Peacock, NBC.
It's great.
Their entire catalog and like the 14 pay-per-view
events. I have Peacock not for the NBC shows, but for the WWE Network. That is the main purpose I have.
I don't blame you.
For. Yeah,
it's pretty great. So we might have to bring that back. Get Judd to break down some old wrestling stuff. All right, that is your Feedback Friday here on Mackie and Judd. Don't forget there is a playoff game this weekend, and Vikings Vent Line will be live on the Purple Daily YouTube channel right after Vikings Giants finishes up, and hopefully not a moment earlier, because the only 2 or 3 times we've gone live early is when the Vikings.
No, we're not going live during a playoff game.
Are you going to leave early at halftime?
I don't care if it's 33-0 at halftime. We're not going live, and I'm staying at the damn stadium.
All right. See you guys.